Right now, you can now get the COVID-19 antibody test without a doctor's prescription or referral and for about $100. But some people are still really confused as to the difference between these antibody tests and the actual test for active COVID-19 virus. So joining us this morning to talk about this is Dr. Brian Moshon of Sonora Quest Labs, one of the places that are offering antibody testing this morning. So, Doctor, I hope I said your last name right. You can correct me as soon as you start giving us information about this. Give us the difference between testing for the active virus, testing for the antibody test, and the efficacy of both of those options, please. Thank you.
Sure. Yep. And the name's correct. The difference is that the test that we came out in March 20th was a PCR test, and that measures active infection. And you're actually measuring RNA that's associated with that virus. The antibody test is a measurement of how our immune response to that virus. And so we're looking at a protein called immunoglobulin G, or more commonly known as an antibody. And this will come up after the active infection has started.
Mm-hmm.
The
so
efficacy
I guess the big
of it.
Question is, say you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I want to continue with that.
Yeah, so the efficacy. So the PCR test is highly sensitive and specific, but you're using it in a very narrow window of time to diagnose the actual infection. So we're talking, a sensitivity and specificity of, close to 100%, whereas the antibody test is obviously based upon each individual's immune response. And so that's where you get some differences. And so the specificity is quite high for these antibody tests that Sonora Quest is using. The specificity basically measures cross-reactivity and to other viruses and other autoantibodies that we make. And we've our own validations, and obviously through the FDA, they've shown that there's very low cross-reactivity with the IgG test that we're using. The sensitivity varies depending upon where in the course of the illness one is. And so IgG is something that comes up much later in the infection, so 10 to 15 days. And so if the antibody test was drawn shortly after you started having the onset of symptoms, there's a chance you won't be detecting antibodies. But the longer you are away from the initial exposure or onset of symptoms, then the more likely that test to become positive.
So I guess the big question here, and what most of us have a lot of confusion over, is say you go in, you get that antibody test, and it shows that you have been exposed to COVID-19 and your body has developed some antibodies to fight it. We don't know how significant of a viral load, say, we were exposed to. We don't know when that happened, and we don't know what's going to happen next. So how do you utilize that information to make smart choices to keep yourself safe in the future and to keep yourself from potentially spreading this to somebody else or putting yourself at risk later on?
Yeah, so those are great points. Currently, most of the antibodies that have come to market are qualitative, meaning that yes or no that you have the antibodies. And there's a lot of research still going on upon how effective these antibody tests are actually measuring immunity after you've recovered from the infection. At this point, there's a lot of unknowns in that. As we go forward with this pandemic and we learn more, there will be other tests that will come to market, and these are called quantitative tests. And we can actually get a tighter level of the antibody that will allow us to better determine whether one has a true immunity to it. Right now, the test that we're using right now, like you mentioned, is primarily used for exposure, and gives us an opportunity to feel more comfortable in the sense of knowing that yes, there's the potential for immunity. Other viruses that are similar to SARS-CoV-2 have shown that these antibodies can be protective and they can last for several years at a time. But then at this point, it's still we're inferring that information. We don't have definitive information saying that these antibodies are truly indicative of a true immune response that's protective.
All right. Yeah, still so much to sort out, but I guess the more information, the better, and everybody can have a clearer picture, say, of if they have been exposed, and hopefully they know that maybe they didn't become ill, and you would, fingers crossed, assume we'll learn that that means you'd have a good, strong immune response to it in the future. Dr. Mochon, thank you so much for joining us from Sonora Quest Labs. We appreciate it, and please do keep us posted as you're getting more feedback on these tests and, how people are responding to getting that information. We appreciate it.